everybody, it's day 18 of the 28-day Get Hired Challenge. I'm Melissa Miller, and today we're continuing on in the heart, the meat and potatoes of your job search. Today, we are talking about how to choose and apply to job opportunities. All right, everybody, I'm Melissa Miller, and it's day 18 of the 28-day Get Hired Challenge. We are really into it full swing now because, like I said, today we're talking about how do you choose the jobs that you're going to apply to. And this, honestly, believe it or not, is one of the hardest obstacles for people to overcome. The reality is people oftentimes self-select themselves out of jobs that they would be qualified for. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you find those opportunities, how you pick which ones are the right ones for you, and a few other things that you might want to consider as you start looking at jobs. So let's start with, how do you even find a job to apply to? Now, you probably know there's tons of different job sites out there, right? That's where most people start. They'll go to, an Indeed or a Monster. Maybe they use LinkedIn. I've heard of people even, there's job boards on Facebook. So people, a lot of times that's how people find jobs. And that can be a really good tool because, of course, it's easy to search. I mean, even now you can just put your search terms into Google if you know what job title it is that you're searching for. So that's one way, right? Now, there's good and bad to that because what you find is a lot of these sites are like aggregators and you get bounced around and you apply through them, but you're not actually applying through the company and things can get kind of weird. So one thing I always recommend is as you're looking at those sites, it might be a good idea, especially if they give you a link, to check out the job posting on the company's site, because in some of those aggregator sites, you end up finding out that the job that you're trying to apply to is already closed. They've already filled it, and that position is no longer listed on their site. So that's one of the things you really have to be careful about. One of the things that can be really cool about those sites too is especially one like Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a cool one because they usually have lots of information about the companies as you're looking through those jobs. You're looking through these listings, you can use Glassdoor to go out there and say, all right, is this a good company to work for? What are other people saying? Another thing that Glassdoor is really good for is trying to get an idea of what you should be asking for in terms of a salary. Now, we'll get into that more tomorrow when we talk about, what happens when you get a job offer. But, great tools. But that's not the only way. Another way that a lot of people will find jobs, honestly, is they may just know of a company that they want to work for. They might know someone else that works there, or it's a company that's just doing really cool things, or it's in a specific market that they want to be in. So maybe you want to be in, the healthcare industry. So you go looking for some healthcare startups that you've heard of before. That can be really good because now you can see all sorts of different jobs that are available that may have job titles you never thought of before. So, and that's the reality is a lot of times different companies have different names for the same job. So you can go to their site, you can search for something like security or cybersecurity or something like that. and maybe find things you otherwise wouldn't have if you were just, broad-based searching through a particular aggregator, for instance. So that's an effective tool. And what also is really neat about that is you can a lot of them will have your stereotypical, this is why you should work for us pages. But if you read through those, sometimes you'll get some good insight into what the organization's actually about. Some of them, it's just a lot of, copy pasta stuff. But every so often, just if you pay attention to some of the words that are being used, what they say and what they don't, I can tell you companies that don't care about, diversity at all, who are really toxic, are not putting diversity things on their website usually. So if that's something that is important to you, which to me it should be important to everybody, that's something you can look for. It's not a guarantee that they're great in terms of diversity and inclusion. They may be awful even though they've got a website, but at least they try to care, which puts them already ahead of some organizations out there. But so that's another way. There's also another way that you can do this. There are third-party recruiters. Now, if you've spent any time on LinkedIn, you may have run into these folks, right? So they work for companies that are paid by the hiring organizations to bring in candidates. And so that can be really effective because they're working on your behalf. Another thing that can be kind of helpful with those is that, and people don't always realize this, but they get paid a commission. And that commission oftentimes is based on your salary. So when it comes time that you've got a job offer, if you're working with a good recruiter, they'll be fighting on your behalf because they know that they're going to get paid better if you get a higher salary. The other thing that's really good with some of those recruiters is that the good ones will be your advocate. And so that's how you can tell right away if you're working with a good recruiter or not. Some of the recruiters are, they're maybe not as good. I can't put it any other way. They are, just spraying resumes everywhere. They're just trying to send as many because they're hoping that something will stick if they throw enough resumes out there. You'll know real quick because you'll start to feel that they don't understand what the job is that you're even looking at. You'll see that they don't really tend to listen to what you're saying. They will probably send you a resume. You may or may not find out about this, but they might be sending you to a lot of jobs that you're just not qualified for or not interested in or whatever. So if you're going to work with a recruiter, and a lot of them will reach out to you on LinkedIn, if you work with a third-party recruiter, the one thing I would tell you is just find someone that makes you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable with them, then you probably want to move on. So those are all different ways that you can go about finding a job. The last, and oftentimes very effective, is using your own network. Now we're going to talk some more about network down the road after we get through this job search process. We've talked already in a couple previous episodes about how important having your professional network is. I can tell you my last 3 jobs now have come up as a result of my personal network. Just knowing knowing people who happen to be talking about a job that was open in their organization. Even now as a CISO, I found out about this CISO search through a couple people that I knew that were just part of my network, and I happened to see them sharing information about it on their LinkedIn pages. So these are all really good ways to find out about potential opportunities. Now, let's go to the next step, right? So you found a job opportunity, and what happens when the job description looks like this? So first of all, this is one of my favorite worst job postings ever. And I know you probably can't even read half of this right now. You're probably maximizing the video on your screen and trying to decipher this. Don't bother. You don't have to. That's what this all says isn't even important. What's important is that you can see there are pages and pages of bulleted items here. And unfortunately, this is the case of a lot of job descriptions. A lot of times, hiring managers are looking for a unicorn who's got this magical list of things that all these different, experiences and skills and so forth. understand, first of all, when you're looking at jobs like this, and this is an extreme example, but there are others that will be similar. Forget about the bullet points for a minute. I want you to start with, you see at the very top here on the far left, where I have all the redacted portions of this to protect the guilty. Do you see this narrative that describes what this job does? Okay, now the first is, they're kind of talking up themselves a little bit in that first paragraph, but then they get into talking about the role, and especially in that third paragraph. That's where I want you to start. If you read that description and that sounds like something you can do, great. That's already a job you should probably be looking at then. Now, all of these bullets, like I said, unfortunately, a lot of job descriptions have them. The way I would encourage you to look at these bullets is to try to figure out what is actually most important to the hiring manager. And a lot of times it's going to be the more important things are going to surface at the top. Because think about this. If I'm a hiring manager and I'm writing or even reviewing and editing a job description, I'm thinking about what's most important to me, and those are the first bullets I put down. You'll also see usually the technical stuff shows up before things like quote unquote soft skills, those core skills that we talked about, the things that transcend industries. So things like communication, being able to present, things like that oftentimes get pushed down further. Another thing I will tell you is pay close attention to what it says is required versus what it says. You'll see, basically nice to have. There's a lot of different terms for it, but they might call them additional qualifications. They might call them desirables or whatever. There's all different terms. But the required ones, you may not even have to fill all those. Understand that most people say required. They're not even necessarily truthful about that. They might say degree required, and then they don't require a degree. They might say, 5 years of experience working in some technology, but yeah, if you got 2, they're happy. So understand that that required section is more about what's most important to them, but you don't have to check all of those boxes. So as you look through these job descriptions, understand that and look for the ones where you feel like you can speak well to maybe the first couple bullets of requirements at most. But really, if you can check off 1 or 2 boxes and you feel comfortable that what's in that narrative description is something you can do, go ahead and apply. It gets your name out there. A lot of times you might send it in. They may look at your resume and say, yeah, this really isn't a fit for this job. But you know what? We're opening up this other job that isn't even posted yet. Let's talk to this person for that job. I've had that happen myself in years past. That happens. I've had it happen as a hiring manager too, where I got a resume and I was like, wow, you know what? They applied to the wrong job. They're not going to be a fit here, but man, I've got this job I'm just about to open up. Let's get this person in right away and talk to them. So, it doesn't hurt to apply to more jobs, okay? But also make sure you prioritize because, again, as we talked about yesterday, you need to be tailoring your resume, and unless you want to be writing hundreds of different resumes, kind of look for the jobs that fit you best. And then one last thing I want you to consider, because this has been a big topic since the pandemic started. Working remote. Right now, there's a lot of people want to work remote, and people are pushing for remote jobs. We found out during the pandemic that, a lot of these jobs that leaders were insisting had to be done, in the office could be done remote. But what I want to caution you about is make sure working remote is right for you. Because a lot of people have never worked remote before. It sounds great until you're in the moment. And suddenly you're lonely. Suddenly you're realizing you're by yourself every day. You see the exact same scenery every day. Nothing really changes. It's always just your house. That's all you ever see. Now, sometimes that's great. I've been working from home for the last 11 years, and I love it to death, and I would never stop. And I hope to never have to. But understand, there's other options out there. hybrid work environments where you might have the option to decide when you go into the office and when you work from home. So if you still have a craving for some human interaction, you can do that. And there are still jobs out there that are pushing for 100% in the office. So be sure that you understand what it is that they're looking for. All right. Well, I've held on to you for long enough. We're going to wrap this one up today. But in the comments, so I can give away another book, I want you to tell me the story of the worst job description you've ever seen. Was it because they wanted 20 years of experience from an entry-level candidate? Was it 4 pages long? What was the worst job description you've seen in any industry as you've been looking for jobs? Tell me about it in the comments. I'll randomly pick one and you'll win a copy of the book. And once again, as I've been reminding you all month long, Manning is giving you 35% off all of their titles. Just go to manning.com, enter that discount code, or follow that link. It'll take you right there with the code already set. Or use that QR code and keep coming back because I am trying to help get you hired in cybersecurity. Talk to you tomorrow.